want to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody who's joining us today. It's March. We are tackling everything you ever wanted to know about AI for talent acquisition, but maybe we're slightly afraid to ask. So thank you all for sending in questions. We are going to do a couple of things today. So first, I want to introduce myself, the panel, get everybody sort of introduced to who's going to join us for today. I want to talk a little bit about what's coming up next month, and then we want to give you a couple of data points to jump into this conversation. So that's our agenda. Again, for those of you who didn't hear at the beginning, there's a couple of conversations that run simultaneously. One is this one that you're going to hear from all of us. The second will be in the chat. Justin's going to be manning that as well. Feel free to throw questions into the chat that you want to get inserted or have an opinion. I know we'll be dropping some of the LinkedIn of everyone who's speaking right in there, so you guys can connect. So please feel free to participate in either one of these conversations. My name is Leah. Welcome to our roundtable. I lead our commercial business here at JobSync. So JobSync is a workflow and automation platform. We work with companies who need to optimize their recruitment marketing efforts. So we really do a lot to ensure that their job content meets the requirements of the world out at large. How do we find as many candidates as possible? Leveraging various tools that you may not realize are available, such as native applications or the ability to have a wrap on your own career site that allows you to optimize your candidate experience. If that's something interesting, you guys should absolutely reach out and let us know. We're happy to try to help on that department. A couple of things here. Justin, do you have the slides that you want to throw up? Next month, I just want to give everybody a heads up. We are going to do a session in April. It's on the 23rd. We are moving it up 1 hour. We have Katrina Collier joining us from the UK, and she said it's too late, the normal time we do it. So we're going to go an hour earlier. And we are going to talk about future-proofing the TA profession, something I am positive everybody is also thinking about, and we'll probably get into a little today. But what do you need to do to work both for yourself and for your as you look forward into the future proofing of the TA world? So Katrina is going to join us, as well as Allison. She was the former head of TA for Anheuser-Busch. She's super awesome. So I'm super excited to have both these ladies join us for that particular conversation. So please feel free to grab the QR code or the link and join us next month. Oh, and a little warning, we are going to switch platforms next month to Crowdcast, so there may be some sort of dancing involved in order to sign up the first time. All right, so let's get everybody, thank you. And since we're dancing, I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves. Matt Staney, you're dancing, so you're first.
Wait,
Feel
that's
free
why I
to
did it.
jump in.
No,
I
awesome.
love it.
Hey, I'm Matt Staney. I'm currently the VP of Community at Hire, which is the largest global community of TA leaders, where I help kind of connect and elevate the world's top talent acquisition leaders. I was previously the founder of Practical Talent, which was a consulting firm that was helping shape modern recruiting and employer branding strategies for over a decade. And then I recently completed a postgraduate program in artificial intelligence and machine learning data science engineering through the University of Texas Business School. And so really geeking out deep on this stuff and excited for the conversation.
Amazing. Mr. Charney, you're up next, because I see you next.
Hi, I'm the second mediocre white Matt. So I am Matt Charney. I am currently the editor-in-chief of recruiter.com, and I am the CMO and head of strategic communications for employer.com. The latter is a holding company that acquires and manages HR technologies. And I don't really know all that much about artificial intelligence, but I know a lot about real stupidity. So it's Matt Charney 05 on Signal, if you have any questions after.
We're going to take that one offline, and we'll check out your emails later too. Cien, you're up. Feel free to introduce yourself, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shen. I'm not as funny as any of the other panelists, I'm afraid. I'm pretty sure. But I am the CEO and co-founder of Launch Lemonade. It's a language language model aggregator, where anyone can build their own AI superpowers. We have over 3,000 builders who have custom built their AI solutions, and they're all non-techies. They're also monetizing on the platform. My background is in financial services and fintech, delivering boring stuff, credit models, identity models, fraud models. But I used to manage a big team of data engineers, data scientists, and had big budgets to deliver AI solutions. And I was doing that for a while. But then when the language models came out, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cheap. Everyone can use this. Everyone can capitalize on this. And that's why we built Launch Lemonade. We've been up for 12 months now, completely bootstrapped and self-funded. And I can say I've seen a lot of people changing how they work and how they monetize with AI.
Awesome. Thank you. And Cam Moore, I see you have joined us as well. Would you like to jump in and give everybody a quick intro?
Yeah, for sure. Hey, my name is Cam Moore, Cameron to my mom. I work at Snapchat. I have a very long, annoying title, aka I do employer brand. And I am originally from California, the Bay Area. I now reside in Brooklyn. And yeah, I'm on Signal too. Probably Hey DJ Cam or something. I'm pretty good at keeping all those things to stay everywhere. But yeah, I've been doing employer brand for I don't even know how many years now. It's well over 5. AI has been a very interesting thing. It's one of those things that kind of popped up, but like all tools, you kind of have to know it so you know why you don't want to use it or you do want to use it. And so that's pretty much how I've been kind of looking at it mostly as of right now. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Justin, I think we're going to start with one very interesting slide, maybe a couple of them, and then I am going to lob the big question out that I know 100% of people want an answer to, and no one actually knows the actual answer to, but we're going to ask it anyway. So let's start with, what is AI capable of doing today, tomorrow, the future? And more interestingly, our friends at Meter put out this chart just a couple weeks ago around the rate in which AI is increasing its ability to consume and complete tasks. And it's not the task part, it's the complexity. So every 7 months right now, we are seeing various AI models able to increase the complexity, double the complexity of what they can complete, right? And so you look at this and you say, wow, right? This is moving at such an incredible rate. What is it going to be able to do in the future? What will happen? What's the crystal ball of employment because of its ability to consume and do more and more complex tasks? Now, granted, Alex also asked yesterday for it to count the number of R's in strawberry, and it really struggled with that. So, we both sides of that particular perspective. But as we think about it, I'm going to throw this out to actually all 4 of you first, and then for the future questions, we'll probably go back and forth. Is AI going to take the recruitment jobs? Is the life of the recruiter coming to an end? Do we foresee a future in which we are a 100% automated function inside of a company? So who wants to start with that one?
Anyone gonna go? I'll go. Okay, so I think right now what you're seeing are enterprise employers making a pretty big bet that the answer is yes. And so what you're seeing are companies, on the one hand, laying off giant transfers of staff, and on the other, signing long-term commitments for enterprise ATSs and CRMs, which tells me that they are drinking the Kool-Aid when it comes to the potential that this can be automated away. However, as an OG in this space, I have heard the same thing about social media. I've heard the same thing about RPA. I've heard the same thing about so everyone always wants to write a eulogy for recruiting, and it just hasn't happened yet. And the reason why, in my mind, is quite simple. And Will, Matt, excuse me, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but for AI to work, one of the things that is required is what's called a rational actor. So the input essentially has to rationally align to the output. And the term rational actor could not be more antithetical to what a recruiter actually does on a day-to-day basis than perhaps any other buzzword out there. No. So as long as people have any sort of complexity, and as long as there are so many variables, from trailing spouses to you can take this time off before you start for your pre-planned vacation, I don't think that there will be any way to fully replace. I think that we are already pretty far along automating a lot of the BS.
Got it. So I'm going to say, so your answer is yes, but also no. And mine is no, but also yeah. Like the short answer is I think no. The long answer is the role is evolving, not vanishing. I think recruiters won't be replaced, but the administrative and repetitive tasks that we typically have to do, like screening, scheduling, sourcing at scale, like that's going to be replaced. I think what's irreplaceable in recruiters is the human intuition, relationship building, navigating messy organizational dynamics, storytelling, empathy. I think AI can't think. It recognizes patterns. It is trying to predict things. And anybody that's done recruiting can understand there is a lot of unpredictable things that can happen in a hiring process. And so I like to think of this as like, as agentic AI comes in, it will handle workflows, not relationships, right? Like we're not looking at, sort of human versus AI. We're talking about human plus AI.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's one of those things where, as I tell other folks, I'm like, AI is not going to replace you, but someone that's mediocre that knows AI will replace you. And I think that if you have this very adverse thing against AI, like, oh, it's the horrible thing, I'm never going to use it, cool, then the people that are less skilled than you or less creative that are using AI will now replace you in that respect, just because you're adverse to this type of a thing. And so kind of like what Matt was saying, it's one of those things where like in the altruistic and good thing, yes, it's going to help you with your better processes and all these other aspects of it. And more of the evilness, can we cut two recruiters and have AI do the same work? That's how a lot of people are going to be thinking, and a lot of businesses are going to be thinking. And they'll try it, and it probably will fail. And then they'll have to rehire people again and go through this whole cycle that we know goes through. But I think it's one of those things where it's here, it's not really going anywhere. So now you have to utilize how is it going to help you do the jobs that you can do in a better way, because I think the role of recruiters are just going to expand, and the amount of work they're going to have to do is going to expand. So AI might be able to help a little bit of that and take some of that repetitive cast off. But at the same time, much to what Matt was saying, both Matts actually, is that's really, you're going to have to know something about it and still kind of evolve and adapt with it.
Yeah, and there's roles within recruiting that, I mean, they're pretty much gone now, like, recruiting coordinators, things like that. Like you don't need those type, any job pretty much across any industry that requires just repetitive doing the same thing over and over again, like scheduling things or updating a spreadsheet or anything that was sort of assembly line type of digital work is not needed anymore. And that uplifts everybody, and the new jobs being created become more creative, more strategic, which I think we as humans at our core, that's what we're born to be. We weren't meant to do these repetitive tasks that a capitalistic society has forced us to do.
And just adding on to that, I think what you're also going to see is more of an emphasis towards the end of the process. So offer negotiation, fit, all that. I think you are going to start seeing sourcing in particular probably be pretty displaced because it's table stakes at this point. So.
I have a slightly nuanced answer. I think that you're all correct. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we don't know what's going to happen. Like if there are certain functions and, like groups within organizations that might have to augment or get their jobs displaced, the question might be, what will recruiters end up doing, or who will they be recruiting, or what teams? So I think there's a lot of layers to this question. Now, what I can share are actual use cases that I have seen from building Launch Lemonade. Some of our very first customers were actually recruiters, and they changed how they operated from being recruiters to becoming entrepreneurs. They built tools that helped hiring managers and teams score for skills, automating, checking CVs, automating, checking if CVs were generated purely by AI. So I think that from my perspective, again, from what I've seen in the actual market, I think the question is, you can look at it in several ways. Will recruiters lose their jobs in the way that they understand their jobs to be right now? I think yes, definitely. how that happens and what will they be doing is another question. And I'm betting on becoming entrepreneurs themselves and becoming entrepreneurial.
So taking a step back, Matt Staney, can you tell just everyone at the in this group today a little bit about when we talk about AI, what do we mean? Are we talking about generative AI? Are we talking about large language models? Are we talking about really automation that we've now conflated?
Yeah,
Would you spend a second and give everyone a little bit of the lay of the land before we jump into the next sets of questions?
sure. And there's lots of different types of AI. In fact, AI has been around for 70 years. And the generative AI that you play around with every day, like ChatGPT and stuff like that, that's been in development for decades. We are just seeing it now because it's finally machine learning models have become complex enough to make it extremely good at predicting text. And I think that's what we need to really remember here is that that generative AI is a type of artificial intelligence that can create new content, and that's the stuff we're playing with most today. But there's all kinds of AI, and we don't have enough time to get into it all. But it's like a super smart autocomplete that doesn't just finish your sentence, but can write the entire paragraph, article, song, and in your voice, right? And so it works because what engineers and machine learning has been able to do is to train models which replicate essentially replicate scenarios at massive scale, right? And recognize patterns like a human would, but a million of them all at once within seconds, right? And so it takes that huge amounts of existing content and it learns those patterns, how words are used, how ideas flow, what makes a poem sound poetic and all of that. And then it trains that model on it, right? And so I think the key here, though, is that generative AI doesn't understand anything at all. It doesn't understand the way humans do. It doesn't know facts or feel emotions. It just predicts the next best word, pixel, or sound based on the patterns that specific model was trained on. And so that's why it's really important as you're evaluating tech in HR is to ask them how they train their data. What is their cross-validation process and what was the database they built on? Because I tell you what, if you're buying a sourcing product that was just trained on and done cross-validation using a database of contingent search firm, networks and customer client candidate data, it may not work for your in-house recruiting team. This is really important to understand foundationally, like what is generative AI anyways.
It's a really good point when you think about the data sets that your data has to learn on, right? So one of the things that we are hearing in the industry more and more is, can AI screen candidates for me? It's a really interesting question. There's two halves to that question. One is the can it, and then I guess there's three. Can it? Will it do it right? And is it legal? Those are three different questions. But can it screen? The answer is 100%. It can screen. Can it screen well? I don't know. That really depends on the next question, which is what data set, to your point. Now, let's think about that for a second as a company. Most organizations do not have, even though you feel like you do, big enough data sets to train only on your own data. Matt's looking at me funny. You think I'm wrong?
Yeah, I do, because I think that companies have a significant amount of that data, particularly when it comes to outcome-based data. They just probably don't have a framework where they can adapt it easily, right? But I think in any enterprise employer, there's enough historical information, generally even something like a Taleo instance, where you could train it to extract value, for sure.
So
You can
you would like
also
to use, oh, sorry, you
Yeah.
think you should use the answer of who we hired 15 years ago as part of the training set of who we should hire next?
I think that would go into stack ranking, which we're now calling AI. I think that would go into predictive analytics, which we're now calling AI. And I think it would go into RPA, which we're now calling AI. So yes, I do. And so, essentially what we're doing when we train any of these is we are replicating human decision-making at scale, right? And so we talked a lot for years about bias and mitigating bias. And this is largely algorithmic bias, which is to say we make mistakes as humans. We make those same mistakes as an algorithm. We're good. So I think largely that's kind of where we're progressing.
My experience has been that the data sets actually, while we think they're big, are actually very small as compared to the training sets that a lot of these things are utilizing. And those data sets have to go across employer and use lots of other data as well to augment to have enough information to be able to say good and bad. The problem is good and bad for one company is not the same as good and bad for another. Like
No.
you can use data to say the extreme gap between the person who is applied and the requirements of the position, sure. But when you get to the nuances of who are we going to select as a company, I think it gets really difficult. I could be wrong, but I like data.
I was going to just add to that real quick. I also, as AI is progressing and getting smarter, it's requiring less data to learn.
Yes.
So while ChatGPT had to absorb all of the internet's information, literally sucked it up in 2 years, it's out of data to ingest. In fact, we're all now ingesting new data into it every day as we use it, and AI itself is creating it. But can you build a model off of a small data set? Absolutely. From a data engineering standpoint, you can use dummy data. It can take a smaller sample set, replicate that sample set 1 million times around certain scenarios or candidate profiles that you have, and learn based on that as well. And so I kind of agree with Matt that, and eventually, like, each company is going to have its own DeepSeek, essentially. That's an open that they can operate and have as a ChatGPT, a smart, maybe even smarter model inherent to their company that will answer your HR questions, your benefits stuff, will, schedule your interviews,
sure
will use all your candidate data to predict how someone's going to do in a job. It's coming. It's coming.
Cam, jump in
Yeah,
here because I
then
think you have some comments on this.
well, yeah, and I mean, honestly, what's already happening is people are making their own language models, right? So you already have within ChatGPT and OpenAI, everyone's making their own little mini ones, right? I'm a multi-hyphenated creative. One of my small little things that I do is I used to be in street dance, and I used to break dance and do a multitude of different styles. So I can make it's my own language model that only does like these street dance styles and put in the information that's only in that little small niche. Then if someone else was to use that, they can ask, hey, when did breakdancing happen? Or why is this person connected to this person? So being able to have smaller and more specific language models that are for around those topics is what I think is going to happen more and more and more, because it's a lot easier. Because now you don't want to have ChatGPT know all your stuff or your company stuff, right? You want to have your own company and like, oh, I work at Snapchat. We have my AI, so I use that more often because I'm at work and I don't want to use ChatGPT because some of their stuff might be proprietary. Now I don't put proprietary information in there, but we make sure that by being able to use our own language model, it's a lot easier for us to keep things a little bit more tightened and compact, and it doesn't need to get out. So we're not doing anything that would go out of there. And so you'll see that more and more with smaller companies and other places, and not even smaller companies, but to Ciena's point about entrepreneurs just making things that works for them so that they can use it for themselves. And so the large ones are going to be cool and flashy and everyone's going to like that. But once you start to really drill down to what you actually need, you might not need the whole internet of information. You may only need this little small sliver.
Well, I think
That's
my
what
point
we're getting.
really,
Specialized LLMs based on what you're
Yeah.
needing to do that are highly trained in that area.
Yeah. Domain specific language is anything. Like I said last week, I was doing a Java developer search for a vendor, and it required experience as a barista or coffee roaster. So, like, the more you can train on your own lexicon, probably the better.
my point to you, Matt, before on the database is that the 15-year-old hires, right? The skill sets that you're looking for, the method in which you're looking, the fact that we used to say you must have X number of years of experience. And as a, I think, group, we realized that if you can learn something faster, that actually might be better than having 10 years to learn it. Like these changes in our own thinking about how we hire people, right? The lean in the last 5-8 years towards growth mindset hires, right? Those are important to recognize that companies evolve and shift, and that the older data is data, but maybe isn't actually going to be valuable. So it's shortening.
Knowledge is a commodity now, right?
Yeah.
Like it's at our fingertips. The world's information is at our fingertips anytime. Like, it used to be like, I need to have a SHRM certification to get an HR job, but know the laws in those specific states and principalities and stuff. Like, you don't need that anymore. Like, literally, I can be an HR person in New York, move to Texas, have AI to help me answer and solve complex compliance issues. You know, it's you can internal mobility and learn new skills pretty quickly now with AI.
Cien, this is your area, right? The getting smaller and smaller data sets. As you think about this conversation, how are you sort of looking forward on it?
I think just to add context for the audience as well, I think there are a lot of elements to and also ways on how you can configure not just language models, but the entire systems that can operate on top of these processing layers to produce outputs. So it's not just, oh, let's use ChatGPT and feed it, but you can add environments around ChatGPT. You can add you can either fine tune it and make your own language model, as Cam suggested, like a llama model, for example, or you could just connect it with a knowledge base and add a system prompt and configure it and add guardrails to how you build or optimize these language models. So it just becomes a processing layer to your own data set. There's so many simple ways, and you don't need to code or fine tune or over complicate being able to utilize your own database so that you can use AI to provide an output that you like. And the biases don't just live in the data, right? Again, as I think it was the other Matt, funny or Matt, I don't know, whatever adjective it is.
I like serious and
Said
funny,
that,
Matt.
I'm sorry. You know, like it's not just in the database, but in the algorithms. Like, what are you looking for? What is your query? What is your request? What's in your system prompt? What are you looking for? Is it experience, for example, or is it someone with growth mindset? These can be added into kind of like your queries that would impact the result of your query. So it's not just the data itself that will produce to bias, but it's your query, the user. It is just a tool. The system prompt, the algorithm. So yeah, there's a lot of things that you can dissect in these tools that would allow you to understand, like, am I getting the right output? If that
Not a
makes sense.
question, not a question asked, but probably a good one for us to dig into is how are companies or how should companies be educating their teams on how to actually leverage these prompts? And it's more than that, right? Cam, you just sort of opened up a little bit of Pandora's box when you said we use our internal AI as opposed to using one of the public ones. There's a reason for that. So as you're educating your not just your recruiting team but even your workforce, how are you guys seeing companies tackle this problem? The what prompts to use, how to tell if it's a good prompt, how to tell if the output is relevant or right or hallucinogenic, and how to ensure the privacy of your business doesn't accidentally leak out to the market. I mean, my favorite competitive intelligence tool of the early 2000s was just go look at job postings. You'll know what the company's up to, right? Because they put it all over their postings. They're like, oh, we're going to hire a rocket scientist. You're like, oh, interesting. They must be going into rocket science. Now we can accidentally give these GPTs a whole bunch of proprietary data that they shouldn't have. So how are companies handling this? How should they be handling it? Who wants to tackle that one? That's a big question.
I think it goes
Cam,
to not being like a catch-all and an all-in-one. Like I think being more specific and nuanced with how you want to use it, because we all know that we're all getting emails from every new startup company that has AI thrown into the mix. It's whatever problem that you have plus AI essentially for every company that keeps attacking to us. Now, some of them are doing it really good, right? They're solving problems that were menial tasks, things that took a lot of time, those stuff. And then other ones are trying to do more interesting things, right? I'm an employer brand talent marketing. So there's a lot of companies that are starting to do things where it's like, hey, you're a team of one, our AI can help you with that load, right? We can help you write articles, we can help you get questions and that kind of thing. So I think it's more about the nuances of what you actually need it for and how they're doing it and how you're tackling it. I mean, you could be a company and be like, yo, we don't use AI for anything because it doesn't really help us with anything. So we would just have AI just to have it. But then there's other companies, they're like, oh my God, this is going to save us so much time. So now we can use our brain for other things that are more creative hit things that are going to be more profitable or ideas that's going to help us move the needle on whatever our goal is. So I think it really just comes down to that aspect of the nuance and like, what are you actually going to use it for? What do you really need it for? As opposed to it is the new shiny thing, but within that new shiny thing, where are you going to put those dollars in to keep it moving?
So for me, I think a lot of this has to do with like the concept of machine learning, which is essentially to say machine learning is people manually saying whether an outcome is good or not. So it really, like on a per instance basis, I think comes down to adoption. So the more people you have working on your individual instance who can train that data set based on outcomes is probably a really good thing. The other thing I just think we need, two things I want to make a point on here. One, everyone in the organization is talking about AI. So I think that the real power comes in working cross-functionally here and not just looking as a recruiting use case, but an enterprise use case, particularly because in an organization, you're going to have a shared ontology, which is kind of like the building block for all of this, right? If you're defining words the same way, you're going to get a lot more power out of it. And secondarily, I think that is recruiting HR job descriptions, agreed, best intelligence ever. But at the same time, like, not that big of a concern. What is a concern, though, is the fact that so many vendors out there are simply white labeling enterprise instances of major LLMs, and almost all are using ChatGPT, which, for the record, is probably the worst of the majorly available LLMs by a great stretch. I know we like to use those interchangeably, but OpenAI is kind of ass. So all that is to say, I think you need to have the right model you're building off of, the right guardrails, and the right people essentially mechanical turking the answers in order to refine the responses cross-functionally.
I just want to kind of augment that a little bit as well. I think it's not about choosing the right model for an entire institution, but a set of models. I think I say every language model has its own personality. There are, for example, on my platform, 21 language models and an auto routing function, because for each language model, they're good at very specific things. So it's about finding the right model for the right task or a set of models, because you can actually get models to work together now for a singular task. So I actually wouldn't recommend just choosing one language model.
On the compliance side, so on the other half of this, right? I love compliance. We all have our weaknesses. What can I say? These language models are creating a lot of problems from a screening and ranking for some companies, challenges, right? For others, it's obviously the availability of the information, proprietary data. The AI note takers that I love for every sales call that's ever existed, and for most organizations is a terrifying prospect from a recruiting standpoint, right? As you guys are thinking about these use cases, there's a difference between, oh, that would be helpful, and oh, I should do that. How do you guys think the organizations should be really putting that into a box to do a teardown on? And Cam, I know you guys have had to tackle this.
Yeah, just quickly, we have kind of an external policy now where we are like, we don't allow AI note takers in our interview process. And we let them know that ahead of time and all that kind of stuff. And that goes from, using AI for coding challenges or using AI just for the overall conversation. So we're starting to make sure that we start to communicate that from up front, but then also have that out in the open so that everyone knows that going in. Because I think that's going to be a thing that a lot of people are trying to figure out how they can wiggle around, because we all know that, using AI to make a resume, hey, no problem, do what you need to do. But using AI to answer a complex question, that's not going to help us. So I think we've been kind of working on that aspect of it, of just kind of saying the yeses and the noses of where it's appropriate and where it's not, and then communicating that to potential candidates.
I think also there's on the AI note takers, once it's in that interview, I had an interview the other day, the guy brought 5 note takers with him, literally 5 different ones. I was like, well, you definitely like to experiment with things, so that's fun for everybody. But you reach a point where that data is now discoverable if something happens, right? So you have a discovery challenge that is you're opening yourself up to if you or they have a note taker on. Matt, you look like you're confused by what I'm talking about.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Oh. Yeah.
I like, so ultimately where this conversation is going to go is it takes high touch and high tech, personalization and automation, right? And so I just think that, to your point on that though, automatic note takers, period, just hurt your ability to retain and engage, right? It's like if you send somebody to class to take notes for you, you're not going to remember the material, right? That was something I want to make.
That's an interesting perspective. I like that. I actually like the note takers from a sales perspective, mostly on the like follow-up action items. So it's quicker to write an email afterwards. I'll be honest, I'm lazy about that one. When we're thinking about these tools that we're starting to, because we're kind of bleeding into tools now. What's the must-haves? What are the ones that are fads that you guys, and we don't have to call it names, let's put them in categories. Which ones aren't actually AI, but are automation disguising themselves as AI? What do you guys think on that, on those categories? Like, I love a good interview scheduler, but I'm pretty sure there's not a lot of AI happening in that one.
I think that we're still very early in the market to dismiss everything or to love something. We will easily fall into, and we have fallen into kind of like this consumer behavior, like let's try everything and then fall in love with something and use that forever. I think that we're still quite early in the game, and so I do encourage people to experiment and see for themselves what they can build on top of. I always encourage for consumers to explore kind of like the entrepreneurial element of being able to use all of these tools to start a side hustle. So whatever opens that up, I go for that too. Like if I can start a side hustle with this tool, then I'm gonna use it. That's my rule of thumb. But yeah, I think this is what I always tell people. I talk to a lot of builders all the time. Don't dismiss anything. This, like if you can sell something, that's all that matters. If you can monetize with something, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter if it's a wrapper, it doesn't matter if it's not good. If you can make money from it, then it's good enough.
And if you can add the words AI to whatever you're making money from, it's worth 12 times as much. So
Your valuation goes straight up.
Yeah, we are still in the hype phase. No, I know exactly what the best tool is right now. And that is whichever one your team will actually freaking use and trust and get adopted and actually show you an ROI. And it takes, testing that out. But I think if you start with like a pilot use case for your TA team, right? Like, let's say we're going to solve some inefficiencies in scheduling, or we're going to solve some inefficiencies in sourcing, and we're going to test out this tool, right? And then try it out, calculate how much less time you spend doing that thing. And you can, and how much better your recruiter bandwidth becomes, right? You can tie that ROI into the quality of hire, speed of hire, candidate satisfaction. Is candidate experience better after deploying this tool? So like AI is like a smart intern. It doesn't replace the manager, but it lets them do more strategic work. And so like, how do we get some of the repetitive minutia that we're, don't want to have to do, that gets in the way of the conversations and the human touch, and do that. And so that's the best tool right now. It's just like the one that your recruiters will actually use, see value in, and you get something out of it.
Plus one with that. I think also too, it's just going back to what Cien said, it's one of those things where you gotta just, try them, and the one that works for you that does it. Like I use my AI for Snapchat just because like I'm at work all the time. So I can use it for what I need it to be. But if I'm outside of work, what would I work? I use Notion AI because I like Notion. It organizes my life, it organizes my brain, and it's right there. So I look at it more as like, what am I actually going to use, as opposed to like, what's the coolest one and what's the latest trend. But yeah, and then what I do is I dabble a little bit in some of the image creator ones. One, I went to school for animation illustration, classically drawn. I can paint acrylics, oils, watercolors, pastels, markers, crayons. But I use the image ones because I want to know how it's learning and how it's going. Because I don't need to use it, but people will be using it. And just for everyone that knows, yes, when you use an image AI situation, you are stealing from other artists. The AI literally goes through everyone's art, pulls it together, and spits something out. So just know that from a moral standpoint, if you're cool with that, cool. If you're not, don't use it. but these are the things you should know going into it.
I'll give one example of one tool that I am absolutely loving that not a lot of people use. It's NVIDIA Nematron. It's a language model that was fine-tuned by NVIDIA. The reason why I love it, it's specifically fine-tuned for agentic workflow. So if you're into you're starting to get into building all of these cool automations with Gen AI and building agentic workflows, NVIDIA Nematron is one language model to check out. So that is exactly what I mean about just checking out what's in the market, trying it out for a specific use case, and don't lock yourself in just yet.
I would say too, it's important to think about these tools not in a vacuum, right? I think that's one of the things that happens. You have, especially in any team environment, you're going to have an early adopter that gets super excited and they lean into something and they try it. And then other folks will try it and go, this made this task so quick, but these other 6 tasks to support it have now been elongated. Now I have to go over here. I have to manually move stuff back, whatever it might be. So I think it's important to remember that these tools have to be used in a process, not as a standalone. And so we can get super excited about that tool du jour, but is it really going to be adopted by the whole team when you get past that early adopter, sort of the visionary type folks? Because it has to work in the business itself, right? It has to work on a broader scale.
Yeah. And it's seeping itself into pretty much your productivity tech stack anyways. So I was talking to a CHRO at Transform the other day, and they're saying, well, we're not approving, AI or whatever. And I said, how's that possible? What do you use? Are you on Microsoft or on Google for your email? And she's like, oh, we've got Microsoft. And I said, well, you've got AI built into everything you do. It's called Copilot, and it's there. In fact, somebody was asking, what are some tactical examples of how to use Copilot? Because that's free. Your business already pays for that. Or if it's Google, it's Gemini. It's free. It already does that. And I'm finding in my daily workflow, just those tools that are already embedded into my work, productivity tech stack has dramatically increased how fast I can build spreadsheets, create documents, create training documents, all this types of stuff. Right. And so to answer, I guess, Elizabeth's quick question on that, the tactical use of Copilot is writing job descriptions and interview questions pretty quickly off of a JD, drafting candidate outreach messaging. So, and then personalizing it, but you're not starting from a blank slate. I mean, that can save you hours, right? Summarizing candidate profiles and resumes to present to a hiring manager, screening support, scorecard drafting, intake briefs, report. There's a lot of tactical things, and that's just with Copilot. That's free and built into your Microsoft 365.
And I think just trying to maybe put a bow on this, we all talk about what can we do to be better business partners? And a lot of this really comes down to turning this into more effective outcome that can be directly tied to recruiting. So I think starting with that in mind is really important. And the thing that's always been really hard in TA is pointing to what did you do to help top line revenue, your cost center, right? And generally what that breaks into is a lot of correlation analysis. And that's kind of imperfect. And I think what we have the chance to do now is actually prove causation if we're pulling in enough of this pattern recognition and data. And so for me, I think ultimately you need to start with the object, because for instance, hours saved in individual employee productivity are not necessarily barometers of profitability, revenue, or anything like that, right? Those are correlated, but there's no causation. So what you need to do is look at how can I create causation to what recruiting does, I think is kind of the ultimate MO. And what does that outcome look like needs to be a starting point.
The great parallel on that, Matt. There are more and more outbound sales tools that will be completely human free, right? They will email, call, stalk you. Amazing, except for on the other side of that is actually still a human being. So you may have increased productivity of your sales organization a millionfold, but have you actually impacted sales, right? The thing that matters. So it's one of my big pet peeves in the market right now is that this obsession with productivity without clarity of the knock-on of what is it actually measuring? Because more emails going into the ether is not a measure of success.
Yeah. My in-mail box can tell you that, although you can apparently write those with AI now. It doesn't make it anyone's going to read them, right? So
Ah,
Yeah, and you can also get stuck in an iteration loop, right? Where you're trying to use AI to speed something up, but you're not prompting in a smart or strategic way, and so you just keep getting more junk, and then you have to keep iterating and iterating. And I've been in situations when I was first starting to use, Chat GPT, where I actually spent like 5 hours on a blog that if I had not used it at all, I could have done in 3, right? Like, so you can also get stuck in a loop with AI and keep digging and digging and revising to the point of where it's no longer increasing your productivity. In fact, it's destroying it.
yeah. On that note, as I think about the world as we go forward, all the data that's out there, right? 80% of customer service jobs are going to disappear. Whatever percentage of recruitment coordinator jobs they're all going to disappear, right? But there's a reality of we are going to see some for specific jobs be smaller in terms of the number of people who will need to do those jobs, but also the skill sets of those people will be changing. So the question I have for all of you is, as we look forward in the next however many years, people exiting educational systems coming into the workforce where they would have done the jobs the AIs are starting to take, the learning grounds. What's our workforce going to look like? How are we going to hire for people who can not do the job but oversee something else doing the job? Sorry, I didn't warn you guys about that question. That was an unwarned question.
I think it almost goes back to like the basis of learning in the first place of like critical thinking skills, being adaptable. Like I was in school and many moons ago, and I was always dinged with being a generalist because I have creative ADD. I like learning a lot of stuff, and I'm pretty good at a lot of different things. So for me, I was just learning as much as I can. I didn't want to pick one specific thing because then for me, I felt like I was pigeonholed. I couldn't do anything else. So leaving school, that actually helped me in my career because I was easily maybe able to adapt to different types of things that came my way. So not from being an illustrator to an animator to a designer to a front-end developer back to designer. So I was easily to adapt to these types of things. And so I think going forward with a lot of the kids now, they're going to have to be adaptable because we don't know. We don't know the job that person had last year might go away, or the job I was training for, say 21 years ago, I'm a lot older than that look, is completely different now. So I think those are those types of things where kids now are going to have to have those critical thinking skills, going to have to learn how to be adaptable and keep the curiosity of learning. Are they right now?
I
Mine
have to agree.
likes to learn about video games. Let me tell you, he knows all about them.
Yeah,
Jump in.
yeah, I have to agree. I mean, as a neurodivergent, I think this is our time. Like, 'cause we like to adapt in AI, and with AI, amplifying already generalized short attention span. It's going to be pretty awesome. But generally, I think everybody has to, and even looking at how the education system in colleges are changing. At first they were like, no AI. And now, I was just in a college course, and, you were encouraged to use it to help you learn to code. And I think the great thing is that we all now have in our pockets, in our phones, an MIT level professor anytime we have a question or want to learn or get research on something. And so we should be thinking and being continual learners, as the great master Jerry Crispin, who's on this call, says all the time, that we have to be continual students. Right now, you can do that in ways that you've never, we used to think that when social media came up and we had YouTube and you can go look at a video on how to do something so quickly. Now we got ChatGPT where, it'll give us the answer, but also a step-by-step guide on exactly how to do it and learn it. And so your brain doesn't have to memorize anymore. It just has to be creative and strategic and adaptable and think about, how can I use this tool to get this thing done in the highest quality in the lowest amount of time?
For me, the single most important skill is always going to be the same. That's learning agility. I don't know that that's at all changed. For me, though, the opportunity is to actually hire creatives because, like, to a certain extent, you, let's say, need an accounting or finance degree a lot less to put together a spreadsheet. But the inevitability about any large language model is it will always regress to median, right? So everything will kind of be the average of the outcome of a pattern. So the point of most outwardly facing businesses differentiation, the better you can get above that median, whether that, and generally that is stemming from creative rather than like input or, whiz bang tech. I think that's where you're going to start seeing businesses win. And certainly demographically, I would want to push in the direction of people who don't think about this as AI, just like they don't think about finding people's like numbers online as sourcing. They just think about it as, how I interact with technology.
So I heard somebody recently say kind of the opposite to what Staney just said, which is it's not really a PhD that's in your pocket. It's like a librarian that has instant access to all of the information. Whereas a PhD is literally writing a thesis about something that doesn't exist yet in the world in their domain of expertise, which is, to your point, Charney, it's all about the creative and pushing out beyond the limits of what has already been kind of consumed and normalized in the world.
Thank you for that clarification. When I said PhD, I mean PhD level of knowledge,
exactly.
Not of thought and strategy.
I mean, we all remember the
intelligence.
librarian in elementary school. You walk in, you're like, I've got a project of blah, blah, blah. And they're like, let's go over here to this book. And then it's like right here. That's what you want, page 131.
Yeah, I commonly tell people like ChatGPT or your generative AI tool is like a really knowledgeable intern with zero common sense. Like you have to spell out exactly. And same thing with this, as agentic AI comes in, it's even dumber, right? Like just a year ago, you try to use an AI agent, it could maybe do 3% of that task, of those tasks on its own without human interference. Now it's like 50 and 60%, but yeah, they just don't have any common sense. They don't know what it's like to be a human. It's just following patterns. It's following instructions. So you have to be very specific and spell it out.
Charney said it's RPA, but it's RPA that can figure out that the button moved from over here on the left to over here on the right, which is really important distinction.
And the last thing I'll add for that is it's one of those things where, now it's encompassed on us to understand what we're actually asking for. So learning the basic prompting and all that kind of stuff. Because if you don't know how to prompt correctly, you're just going to get a lot of nonsense out. And so as you start to learn better prompts and how to ask better questions, which goes back to communications, which goes back to school, which goes back to us being kids again, which I am all for, people are going to have to learn how to ask better questions, and that will give you better answers and better outputs.
I think on top of that, people will have to learn how to become entrepreneurial as well. So 75% of Gen Zs have expressed that they're wanting to become entrepreneurs. Let that sink in. From a organizational perspective as well, organizations are becoming leaner. What that means is that we're going to stop hiring for roles, specific new hires or skill specific new hires, but we're just going to look for problem solvers. Who's going to be able to build a set of solutions or find their set of solutions to be able to do something. And that, at the end of the day, I think that's going to be the most important skill, and that's what we're going to be hiring for, and that's what I'm banking on.
Yeah, at our company, our CEO actually announced on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago after I started saying, we're no longer hiring people who haven't found smart ways to incorporate AI into their daily workflow. If you don't know how to use AI, they will not hire you.
Yep. As a final note here, as we're rounding out our time here together, this question had come across, and I just think it's kind of incredible. So we're gonna throw it out to you guys. As more job seekers use AI to tailor applications and their screening responses, and as more employers look to AI to conduct candidate screening and ranking, what's going to happen? The AIs are just going to talk to each other? Like, what's the plan? What's our go forward in 2025, 2026 for recruitment as we are all leaning towards AI, good and bad? Final note. Cam, you're smiling the widest, so you're gonna get the mic first.
I smile all the time. It just happens to be in you guys' direction.
I love it.
So I think we're basically going to be in this weird tete-a-tete, I guess is the best way to put it, Everyone's trying to figure out the shortcut to get to the thing that they want to get to. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing where you're right. It's going to be basically AIs going back and forth with each other. And I think the next level of that will just be how are we going to filter out the filters essentially? And I think there's going to be a place where from a certain level, AI will always be there, and then it'll stop and it'll be back to being humans where we can kind of sort, interpersonally and that kind of a thing. But yeah, I don't want to take all the time, but so yeah.
We're still in the hype phase, right? So everyone's trying to use it right now and see if it gets them results. And then if it doesn't, then we get into the disillusion phase where we thought, okay, maybe we need to back off and let's put some humans back into this process again. But in general, I think another way to look at this is if this candidate has trained this AI on their specific experience and it's just better effectively communicating it. And if the recruiting team has trained their AI specifically on their culture and what their hiring process is, then really are these just not extensions of the humans figuring this out so that now when it gets to the phase of the hiring process, like an interview, they can actually have a conversation and not do the repetitive screening questions stuff, get that out of the way.
I like your optimism.
Doesn't it just shorten things?
I like your optimism. As I look at the 8th resume that looks nearly identical to the previous 7 that I just looked at.
So just my response is like, if you are hiring for positions where this matters, then it probably doesn't, right? Like if a bot can fill a job pretty quickly, and you have seen companies move to full-on automated processes, and actually the problem becomes like 80 to 90% of people don't show up day one. So you're creating a tremendous amount of inefficiency when you do that. But like more importantly, I think that any successful recruiter, AI or not, is talking to a candidate not with a view of, are they going to fit this role, but like, where can I plug them and get a successful placement? And so for me, like, if you're relying on applicants to use these AI filters to find jobs, and then you're like, you've already lost the game, basically, right? That you're relying on role-based agents to fill roles, and a monkey can do that.
Yeah, what about the selling and the employer brand aspect of the hiring process? Aren't we trying to sell these candidates of why they want to be here and sharing storytelling and experience, right? Cam, you're in employer branding, right? Like, I don't think bots are going to be as good at that, frankly.
Jen, final note.
I'm aware of many cool tools. I've mentored and seen some of these very cool tools emerging from the startup space, both in the States and the UK, that are very good at detecting and like it's a cat and mouse, like they're all both catching up with each other. But I am aware of very cool tools that recruiters and hiring teams can use. Innovation, I guess with all of these problems coming out, the more exciting thing from my perspective is that solutions are also coming out. So yeah, that's what I'm excited about, are the solutions coming out.
Guys, thank you so much. We're out of time. I really appreciate all 4 of you guys for joining us. All the attendees who've stayed the whole time. Thank you guys so much. Please join us next month, April 23rd, 1 p.m. Eastern time. We are going to talk about how to future-proof this profession of recruiting and talent acquisition. And I want to thank you guys all again for joining us, and for everyone who sent questions in. That was awesome. Thank you guys. Have a fabulous Wednesday. Thank you.